I just have a witchy sense that it's going to be June, because I think the Tories are going to get so wiped out at the local elections. And I think Rishi Sunak is going to be forced into a position where he has to call an election before that or face a leadership campaign. And I think, even though he's obviously hanging on by his fingernails and his, the laces of his Adidas Sambas, it's the more noble thing to go down, with an election than be toppled by Kemi Badenoch.
Talk a bit of politics, naked, raw politics. Polls this week suggest, well, actually not as naked as they'll be getting, but this bit, dear me, what a terrible way to start this item. Polls this week suggested the Conservatives are on course for a much bigger defeat than the one even suffered by John Major in 1997. Labour would have 400 seats, or perhaps 403. Cabinet figures such as Jeremy Hunt could lose their seats. Lord Frost, the Tory peer, said there would only be smoking rubble left. The paper today actually suggests that Labour is beginning to lose some votes in strong Labour seats because of Gaza, as we were discussing before. But it probably won't make any difference to the end result, and they're picking up far more votes elsewhere. Gráinne, we've seen a lot of polls along these lines of like absolute Tory apocalypse looming. At this stage, polls do get things wrong. How surprised would you be at this stage if this were wrong? Very or only slightly?
I would be very, very surprised and mainly very disappointed, and not for any political reasons. It's because I think election night, you want drama. You want oh my God, this is historic. You want people losing their seat and taking it badly. I want to see somebody crying. I want upsets. I think as a country, we've earned it.
Yeah, you do want a sort of Patillo-style thrill, don't you?
Exactly.
Without that.
I want the next day for people to say, were you awake for 3:00 when that return came back? That is the drama of election night is what keeps me going. So I hope I want unexpected moments. I want it all.
But wouldn't the biggest drama right now would be for a poll to come out saying the Tories aren't going to do too badly? That would be the only thing that would count as news. Would be like, I'm going to get a few cuts and bruises, but, no one will lose any limbs. That would be the only... We haven't seen any polls suggesting that for a really, really long time. So I think it's somewhere between a 1997 landslide and complete annihilation, isn't it? That's just what we're looking at.
That would really put the cat among the pigeons. Remembering that Portillo moment, of course, it was shortly followed by a Rifkind moment, which everyone else in the room I was in enjoyed rather more than I did, I would say, in 1997. But there we go. Jane, the fact that it all feels like such a foregone conclusion, and yet we're left here sitting waiting for an election without really knowing when it's going to come. Does it make our whole system seem just a little bit silly?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, we're in Britain. We're meant to have an election campaign that's sort of 5 or 6 weeks, not an American election campaign that lasts 2 years. And I think it is just, we're stuck in this kind of endless loop at the moment. I will say that this is not based on any insider intelligence, but I just have a witchy sense that it's going to be June, because I think the Tories are going to get so wiped out at the local elections. And I think Rishi Sunak is going to be forced into a position where he has to call an election before that or face a leadership campaign. And I think, even though he's obviously hanging on by his fingernails and his, the laces of his Adidas Sambas, it's the more noble thing to go down, with an election than be toppled by Kemi Badenoch.
I hear what you're saying, but the other side of the coin, I've got a book out in June, and I'm also taking a week off to go to Glastonbury. So if they could not have it in June, I would. Rishi, if you're listening, and I know you do, if you could not have that election in June, that'd be very.
June, just get it over and done with. Don't listen to Hugo, Rishi. We
July,
all need to
August,
move on with our lives.
Even May, that would all be fine. Anyway, look, stick with us. I've got Gráinne and Jane for a while yet. A few people getting in touch. Ian says, no problem pausing arms sales to Israel as soon as Hamas surrender and the hostages are released. And Andrew says, the majority of our arms exports are components used in US jets sold to Israel. We could not stop these sales. Thank you. That's very interesting. Keep getting in touch. Like I said, text us June. Rishi, if you're listening, and I know you do, if you could not have that election in June, that'd be very...
June, just get it over and done with. Don't listen to Hugo, Rishi. We all
July,
need to
August,
move on with our lives.
I said before we were going to cover some naked, raw politics. Now let's get to what I'm reluctantly about to call the meat. A very, very weird political story this week. A weird sexting scandal in politics. William Wragg, a Conservative MP, seems to have been contacted by a fraudster of some sort who sent him explicit pictures, to which he replied in kind. He then appears to have been effectively blackmailed into handing over more MPs' numbers, some of whom were also targeted, and some of whom also responded. He's since apologised. He's kept the whip. Let's probably not talk about whip. You know what I mean? Obviously, this was deeply traumatic for him, and I'm sort of almost reluctant to mock it at all, although not that reluctant. It's a very, very odd story with a variety of angles. Jane, let's start with this one. I'm going to be honest. I have never felt the urge to send a picture of my intimate parts to anyone, a stranger or otherwise. Am I the weirdo here?
No, I don't think you're the weirdo.
What's wrong with the kids?
Yeah, so I just want to say up front, I have full sympathy for William Wragg actually on this, which is again an unusual position to find myself in, being sympathy for the vice chairman of the 1922 committee. It's not someone I normally feel sympathy for, but I think he was reckless and perhaps foolish, but definitely naive. It seems like he met this guy on Grindr and was fully planning to meet this person for a drink, and they were exchanging pictures, which is something the kids do. But then he was blackmailed. The people I feel much less sorry for, and I'm kind of flabbergasted by, is these two other MPs who are as yet unnamed, whose numbers William Wragg passed along under duress, who got text from someone they didn't know and whose number they didn't recognise, and responded by sending naked pictures of themselves. I'm sorry, I'm very much not a public figure, but I know you don't send things like this to people whose identity you're not totally sure about. And in fact, as you say, maybe don't send them at all. Maybe don't send them to anyone. My rule, and I'm very available to coach Westminster on this if they'd like me to, don't send anything you wouldn't stand by sober or let your mum see. That's just the basic rule. But I do think maybe there is something in what happens to politicians' brains once they get into positions of power. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many. Anthony Weiner, massive star of the Democrats, married to Hillary Clinton's closest aide, sexting teenagers when he was sort of shining brightly in Congress. It's just... yes, it's a lonely life. It's a weird life. You're probably dealing with this conflict between wanting a private life, but also wanting desperately for power and public office. But you're right, Hugo. I mean, most people I know don't send them to anyone, let alone strangers.
It's just, I know. I mean, look, I guess there's an element of sort of risk taking and danger and ego that goes with politics. Of course, there's a lot of ego in journalism as well. But I always think we're just not quite as weird as they are. I don't know. It's very, very puzzling to me. Grania, look, I mean, as Jane said, these other MPs who sent pictures after being contacted out of the blue, I sort of feel like I'd be vaguely edgy if I found out my dentist was behaving like this, let alone my MP. The fact that the Wragg has kept the whip and there's no suggestion of anybody else losing the whip. Should this be a resigning matter, or am I just being sort of quite old-fashioned and actually these are just the risks of the sort of modern digital dating scene?
So first of all, William Wragg, I do feel so sorry for him, because obviously he's a man of a certain generation and maybe a certain political outlet, and maybe he hasn't felt comfortable being able to express his full identity.
I think he's 36, isn't he?
Is he?
Yeah, he's 36.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
and he's been insulted by me this morning. He's having a tough week.
He does have the wellies of a much older man. I've seen pictures.
I think this is hilarious, and I think it's such an insight into male MPs' egos that they're getting all these texts from anonymous people, and they're like, that makes sense. Yeah. And I think this is brilliant. What a way to get young people engaged in politics.
Well, you say that, but you say, text your MP. Who knows what you're going to get back? I'm not sure.
Maybe this is a way of getting their attention if you've got like a pothole in your local area.
Cyber flash them. That'll do it. Yeah.
Imagine the MP going, oh, thank God, it's just a pothole.
But isn't
Dear
it
me.
funny how they didn't target any women? Everyone who was targeted was targeted by Charlie. The gay men were targeted by Charlie, and the heterosexual men were targeted by Abby. Odd, they didn't target any women. Maybe they thought that women wouldn't respond with news. Weird.
I mean, I would say it did say in the story as well that Charlie/Abby also contacted some political journalists. I did go back through my WhatsApps just to check. I'm pretty sure I'm in the clear here. But you never know. Just in case there'd been an approach.